Redshift here, doing my part to shift perceptions out of the pink and into the red. I couldn't help but make this video. I originally was not going to do a video on it, but then I read a lot of the complaint made by Reitman against Avital Ronell, and I decided it would be worthy of a video after all. Reitman was a PhD student and a young homosexual man, and Avital Ronell was at the time a 60-year-old professor, a woman, who was his advisor for his PhD. She repeatedly sexually harassed him for years while he was trying to get his PhD, touching him, kissing him, refusing to help him with his PhD until he capitulated to her demands for touching and romantic language between them. This woman, Avital Ronell, is a superstar in the world of academia. She's a published author, and she has written about literary studies, psychoanalysis, feminist philosophy, political philosophy, ethics, and other things. I find it quite telling that she seems to be a feminist, and yet she feels no problem with relentlessly sexually harassing a young gay man and trying to force him into a relationship with her. As far as I could tell, she seems to have never been married. So here we have a 60-year-old woman who is not in a relationship with anyone and probably never had kids or a husband, and even though she's downright old, 60 years old, even though her life is probably mostly over and her fertility is long gone, she is still obsessed with men, wanting to get into a relationship with a very young man. And a gay man at that. He looked like he's in his early 20s or something. Maybe mid-20s, but he's quite young, right? And he's gay. And yet she's still pursuing him. It's crazy, right? The complaint filed by Reitman's lawyers, which is quite descriptive of the whole ordeal. I didn't read the whole complaint. It's quite long. But I did read quite a lot of it. I read, I don't know, maybe 30, 35 pages of it. Of the complaint, but it was even way longer than that. But I probably should have read the whole complaint before I decided to make this video, but the script is already pretty long, and maybe it'll just be more description of the same thing, if I read the rest of it, so I'm not going to bother reading the rest of it. I'm just going to give, this commentary, this video, from what the part of the complaint that I did read, which is like the first 30, 35 pages, which is really enough for a long video. So yeah, so he's gay. So the complaint is very descriptive of the whole thing, right? Which lasted for 2 years. It shows very clearly the level of Ms. Ronell's delusion. Women should be sick to death of sex by the time they're 60 years old, or at least not obsessed with it anymore. But this is what happens when women. This is what happens when women neglect their biological urges. Their natural path through life. If they don't get married and have children at a young age, then they just stay hung up on that stuff, and then they just are, they have a major problem later on in life, right? So, when they try to take a man's path through life, college, career, etc., they feel unfulfilled, unwanted, unloved. And so they go so far as to even put their very career and livelihood in jeopardy to pursue men who clearly don't want them. And even if she was going to sexually harass someone, why in the world would she think that she could get a gay man to fall in love with her? This just shows the incredible level of delusion possessed by Ms. Ronell. But actually, it makes a certain kind of sense when viewed from the outside. As I spoke about in my video where I talked about older female teachers having sexual relationships with underage male students, the reason these women do this is because they are highly masculine women. They have adopted feminism and adapted to the new culture which promotes females being like men. And so they are more masculine than they should be. And so they seek their complement. They are more, instead of being yin, like females are supposed to be, these women are yang, like men are. So they're seeking a yin man, so they're seeking a feminine man. But all men want to be at least a woman's equal in a romantic relationship that he gets into. And no man wants to be in a romantic relationship with a woman who he is inferior to. A woman might be in a more powerful position in a relationship where a guy and a girl get together, such as if she's far richer or far more attractive than he is, assuming he does not have a lot of money, which would make up for his lack of attractiveness. But he will not like her having the power over him, and he will struggle against it so that he does not feel like he's just her bitch boy. But one way that an older woman with a lot of masculinity can be in charge in a relationship is if the male is very young and or very innocent, or in this case is very feminine because of being gay, and or if he is in a position where she has power over him, such as Ms. Ronell had over Reitman during her career as his PhD advisor, because of her being his PhD advisor. Part of female amorality is that they don't just find it impossible to be moral if they don't have a man and or a culture showing them how to be moral and forcing them to be moral, but a woman's morality also means that women are unfit for positions of power, no matter how brilliant the woman is. And this is because women abuse power. Women do not respect rules. Women always seek self-advantage, regardless of whether they have to break the rules, such as the legal rules made by the government, or whether they have to break the ethics rules of the place where they work. And then when they get into trouble for their illegal or unethical behavior, then they will lie and or blame the victim and or use their power to retaliate against the victim, such as Ms. Rennell did against other people who brought complaints against her for her ill treatment of people. It is best for women if they are pressured and shamed into becoming wives and mothers. It is best for societal stability because when all men get a woman who they have power over and therefore get sex and children, when all men get a woman and those men have power over their woman, and when the man and the woman when the man gets sex and children and the woman gets children and a way to get taken care of and stuff, and when those men get authority over their children, then the society is far more stable and more sustainable. But if we act like it's just fine for lots of women to go into the workforce and neglect their biological urge to marry and have kids, then the result is that many of these women seek to use their positions of authority to try to pressure or coax younger men into sexual relationships with them. This is something that is especially likely to be done by the ugly women, because that's why they do it. They're ugly and they cannot get a man, so they use the only tool they have to try to get a man. Their authority that they have in the position that they hold in the company that they work for, or the university, or whatever. And of course, because they're ugly, their advances will be far more unwanted than if they were attractive, which makes the sexual harassment just as bad, if not worse, in many cases, right? It's not as if her employee can tell her he's not attracted to her because she's ugly. He'd get fired. So he has to be polite, but he cannot encourage her either, because he wants it to stop. So he's stuck. He has to politely tell her no, but if she keeps pursuing him, what can he do? He can't brutally rebuff her, and if she's got more power than him, he could tell her superiors, but that could, rebound on him, as he said, she said, maybe, and maybe she's, got clout and they don't want to fire her, etc., such as in this case, which I think I might talk about later in this video. It is nothing less than absolute insanity to let women have equal rights. Women dwell in the realm of emotions, and their brains are merely used to rationalize those emotions. There is no logic or guidance or principledness there. There is only advantage seeking. There is only a desire to obtain pleasant feelings, both physical and emotional. And their minds are used to try to make this happen. No matter what rules have to be broken, no matter who has to be coaxed or coerced or threatened into doing what she wants. Men must have greater authority than women in relationships, not equal authority. When men have equal authority, then women try to dominate. It is only when men have greater authority than women, in other words, absolute authority over their family, that women capitulate and do what their man says, and therefore act sanely, logically, rationally. It must never be forgotten that just because a woman is highly intelligent does not mean she is not totally delusional. And just because a woman is sweet or intelligent does not mean she is not highly dishonest. And just because a woman is publicly opposed to oppression and opposed to abuse of power does not mean she is not abusing her own power to get what she wants. Women believe that reality is what they can get away with. That is how they conduct their lives. Thus they are not fit for positions of power. Thus they are not capable of having equal rights to men. And let me further say that Avital Rennell is Jewish. Her Wikipedia page says that her parents were both Israeli diplomats, and that as a young immigrant she experienced xenophobia and anti-Semitism, and it also says that she is a member of Jewish Voice for Peace. And the complaint said that she also referred to her maid or something like that as an Ozetta or Oret or Zera. I can't remember what it's called. Some Jewish term for a maid. So that's more evidence that she's Jewish. So it's almost certain that Avital Rennell is Jewish. And her victim, Mr. Reitman, seems to be Jewish as well, interestingly enough. The complaint says that Israel is his home country. Jewish people have much higher rates of homosexuality among their people than do other races, as Alt MGTOW showed in one of the videos that he did where he showed the statistics for homosexuality for various races. It was like, I don't know, 1 or 2% for white people. It was a little higher for some of the other races, and then for Jewish people, it was something like, I can't remember, 8%, I think, if I remember correctly. It was way higher for Jewish people. So Jewish people have way more homosexuality among them, which is probably because of all the interbreeding that Jews did for thousands of years. So that explains Reitman's homosexuality. And regarding Ms. Rennell, the fact that she's a feminist and a sexually aggressive abuser of a young man makes sense in the context of her being Jewish as well. This is because a very large number of the leading feminists of second-wave feminism in the 60s and 70s were Jewish. Jewish women are just like Jewish men. They're very aggressive. The aggressiveness of Jewish people explains the extremely aggressive masculine nature of feminism. So, because you had most of the leading feminists of second-wave feminism were Jewish, this explains the extreme aggressiveness of second-wave feminism. And third-wave feminism is really just second-wave feminism again. Like, you know, the second-wave feminism came out, and some of it was more moderate, but a lot of it was extreme, right? So because it was so extreme, the more moderate aspects of second-wave feminism were adopted as sort of a cultural compromise between men and women and or between the 99% and the elites who were pushing the feminists, right? So, at least in my opinion. So this is how that was. But now, third-wave feminism is kind of just the return of the extreme aspects of second-wave feminism that were always there, even in the 60s and stuff. And they're just trying to push and make the extreme aspects more mainstream, right? So, you know, third-wave feminism is not really third-wave feminism. It's just a return of the most extreme aspects of second-wave feminism. It's feminism trying to get what it originally wanted. You know, men in concentration camps and women having ultimate power and checking men out like library books for procreation purposes and shit like this. This is what they were saying in second-wave feminism originally, you know, 60 years ago. And they're saying it again now. Well, I mean, they're not saying that, but they're saying other super extreme things, like, you know, drinking male tears and how we should, you know, get even more women in college, you know, and, you know, like, it's a good thing that we have more women in college than men, and let's get even more women in college, and let's, you know, make even more extreme laws, like yes means yes, and let's just make even more extreme things, just endlessly, right? Because women are just pushing this shit because they want men to re-enslave them. They want men to say, enough, this is insane. You know, you are going back to the kitchen. You are going to be barefoot and pregnant again. You are not going to work anymore. You are not going to, you know, have equal rights. You are not going to say anything anymore. You are going to take care of kids and live a nice, happy domestic life from now on. And if you don't like it, you know, we're going to show you what men we really are. We're going to beat you or whatever. We're going to overthrow the government, whatever it takes to, you know, make society functional again and put you back in your place to where you'll be happy with us because we're aggressive and masculine again. This is what women really want. This is why they're actually endlessly pushing with these insane feminist things, right? Because they want men to push back and put women back in their place, right? So they're never going to stop pushing with more and more extreme feminist bullshit until men push back and force women back into the home, right? Back into the kitchen. Force women to be barefoot and pregnant again as a job, right? So, you know, they wanted to make white women like they themselves were, right? You know, these Jewish feminist women, you know, who are pushing their quote-unquote values on Western women, right? They want to make white women just like Jewish women are. That is, aggressive, masculine, independent, etc. But of course, white women are very different than Jewish women because they are different races. They have different genetics, right? And so white women did not do well trying to become aggressive and masculine. It just does not fit white women's nature, right? So, you know, not to imply that Jewish women do well being super aggressive either, but it is more in the character of Jewish females to be aggressive and masculine than it is in the character of white females to be aggressive and masculine. But it came at exactly the wrong time. What with, you know, advanced technology, you know, beginning to arise, and that technology making life safer and more entertaining, and therefore making men weaker. So women started getting more aggressive and masculine at the same time that men started getting weaker. Jewish women's aggressiveness is not so bad because Jewish men are cunning and deceptive and aggressive, and so Jewish men can handle aggressive Jewish women, either by putting them in their place with physical force or by outwitting them or by other means. But while men began getting weaker at the same time, but white men began getting weaker at roughly the same time second wave feminism arose, and thus white men were not suited for keeping control of more aggressive masculine white women, especially since white men do not make as much money as Jewish men do because of their lower IQs, and also because white men are naturally honest, naturally not deceptive, unlike Jewish men who are naturally deceptive. White men are naturally honest, which makes it harder for white men to hold white women when white women are being aggressive. It makes it harder for white men to hold white women accountable, right? And stay dominant when white women are not only deceptive, but are aggressive as well, right? So MGTOW is the only solution, walking away from women. Well, this is the only thing that'll bring white women to heel, because white women being both deceptive and aggressive is no match for men who are honest and aggressive, but not as aggressive as they used to be, right? Especially in a system where the government is totally tyrannical and the laws are misandric and all the rest of it, right? So this makes it so the white men are no match for white women, white feminist women, and so the only way to bring white women to heel is to go MGTOW en masse, so that women realize they have to become demure again and let go of their aggressiveness and stop working and all the rest of it. And then men will be able to control women again. And then, we'll have a functional society again. We'll have functional relationships again. We'll have functional families, healthy families again, etc. So this is how that goes, right? Like, white men are naturally honest, just like Japanese men are, right? So white men were and are ill-equipped to deal with aggressive, masculine, white feminist women, the kind of women that we now have everywhere in the West. This is why MGTOW has arisen. We cannot dominate women financially because of many reasons, only one of which is that Jewish people already occupy the top positions in society. We cannot dominate women physically because of all the laws, and we cannot dominate women with dishonesty because women are naturally better at it, and because men are just not suited for it. At least white men are not suited for dishonesty. And we thus don't even want to try to outwit women in a competition of deception. And so men's only option is to walk away from women until women wake the hell up and start reverting to what they were before first wave feminism. And regarding Vital Ronell and Reitman, she also, not only did she sexually harass him and refuse to work with him when he didn't want to call her all these pet names and use this flowery romantic language with him, like saying how desperately he missed her when she was always saying how desperately she missed him and stuff. He was also in a relationship with a guy. Like, after a while, when she'd been harassing him for a while, he got in a relationship, so he had a boyfriend, and she still kept harassing him. And he would try to spend one night away from her, like, without texting her or whatever, and she'd, like, freak out and get all angry at him and withdraw and refuse to help him and all this kind of stuff. And she'd try to get herself invited on she got mad when he went on a vacation with his family to Israel, I think it was, and she was not invited to go with him. I mean, this woman is totally delusional, totally psychotic, totally oppressive, totally harassing him. It's totally insane the way she acted. And then, when another woman, I think it was a woman, a coworker, or maybe it was another man, but I think it was a woman, she mistreated this woman in some other way. I don't think she was sexually harassing her, but she mistreated her in some other way. And the woman, I think, complained or something, or was threatening to complain. And so Ronell, basically, like, what did she do? I think she maybe complained to her superiors or other staff members about her, and basically got this woman blacklisted. So she either couldn't get a job, or she could not, or she had trouble in the school while she was still doing her PhD or whatever it was. I can't remember what it was, but basically she totally, like, screwed this woman who was actually the victim, right? And then she tried to do this to Reitman. He got his PhD, but she, like, poisoned him in the minds of all of her colleagues, because she's a superstar in the academic community, Vital Ronell is, right? So she has not only tons of friends in the university, who will, like, not work with someone if she tells them that this person is trouble or, whatever. But she also has friends at other universities and corporations and everywhere. She's got friends everywhere, right? So she poisoned the well with everyone, so that Reitman, even after he got his PhD, he couldn't get a job in academia, right? Like, he'd try to get, a professorship or some kind of job somewhere, and even though he had a PhD, he couldn't get a job, because she told everybody that, like, he had some kind of problems or something, right? Like, I can't remember what she said. She didn't say that he had been sexually harassing her, but she did say something, like he had some kind of problems, personal problems, or, like, weakness, or, like, delusional ideas or something. I can't remember what it was. So she poisoned him in the minds of all the other people so that no one would hire him. So, making him lose out on tons of income. He couldn't find a job, and, not only was it cruel of him to sexually harass him for as long as she did, but she basically made it so he couldn't get a job. And what is crueler than, like, getting someone fired, or worse, making it so they can't even get a job at all in their industry? I mean, that is really, really cruel, because now he just spent tons and tons and tons of money on a PhD and years of his life for something that now has no utility. Now his PhD is worthless because he can't get a job, because she poisoned him in the minds of all these other academics where he would have been able to get a job before, right? So now he's not only wasted years of his life getting this PhD that's now worthless, but because he can't get a job with it when he would have been able to before if she had not poisoned him in the minds of all those other people. But he also wasted tens of thousands or however much money he wasted getting the PhD. So what she did to him is super, super, super cruel, right? But also what she did, she did other things like what was it? What did she do? I can't remember. I had it just a second ago. God damn it, she did all these mean things, like, oh, Christ, what was it? Oh, yeah, well, this isn't really what she did, but because she's such a superstar in the academic community, what he did was, he went to, like, the higher authorities, like he's supposed to, right? Eventually, like, maybe initially, and then again, eventually later, when she just would not stop sexually harassing him, after months, years. Like, I think he went to them again after, like, 2 years of sexual harassment, him touching, her touching him and kissing him and refusing to work with him unless he talked with her in this romantic way and stuff. Like, so he went to this, like, vice provost or vice something, I can't remember, at the university, and this person was supposed to, maybe even legally, or at least according to the corporation's rules, the university's rules, was supposed to report this to his upper people or whatever, or was supposed to at least make a report of it, right? But Reitman, he complained about it, and the guy did nothing. Absolutely nothing, which he was obligated to do something, but he did nothing about it. No record of him ever doing anything, even though Reitman complained to the guy about it, right? So this is what they did. They all covered up for her. All her coworkers at the university, when Reitman complained like 2 or 3 times, I think, to people who should have been able to hold Ms. Rennell accountable for her sexual harassment and stop her. They didn't try to stop her. They didn't, make any records of it, probably because they knew they'd maybe get sued or whatever, but they're getting sued now only because they did nothing. This guy, Reitman, he tried to, keep quiet. He tried to, play the game. He tried to, be agreeable and, come to some kind of conclusion without getting people fired or embarrassed or suing. I mean, he's only suing now because he has no other option. He can't get a job. They ruined his reputation or whatever. It's craziness, right? Like, so he did the right thing, but this is what happens, right? Like, it's like, it doesn't matter whether it's a man in a great position of power, whether it's in academia or Hollywood or politics, or whether it's a woman in the position of power. It really doesn't matter. They want to act like it's, men and the patriarchy and men oppressing women and men using the old boys club to make it so the women have no voice and can't stop these men from sexually harassing them and doing all these things, right? But no, because they act the exact same way when it's a woman. It's about power. It's not about gender or patriarchy. It's about power. People in power have friends, and their friends don't want to blacken their name by, continuing with the normal procedures for stopping sexual harassment. And this is why laws and rules for corporations and all this kind of thing for stopping sexual harassment are basically worthless. Because if you try to speak out against someone who's hugely powerful, like Steven Spielberg in Hollywood, or Ms. Rennell in academia, or, Bush in, H.W. Bush or W. Bush or Clinton in, politics, or whoever it is, if you speak out, you're going to get crucified. You're going to be called, a liar and a person who only wants money, and maybe it won't even go anywhere at all. Maybe you'll be killed to keep you quiet. Like, all this kind of crazy shit happens because it's about power. It's not about the boys club or, the old boys club or patriarchy or men looking out for each other, men harassing women. It's about people in power harassing their underlings. And it's about people in power being able to get away with it because they have power. So women and feminists putting this stuff on men is ridiculous because the same exact dynamic happens. The cover up and not letting it go forward and the continual harassment even after it's been reported. All this stuff happens when it's a woman in power and the woman is harassing a younger guy with no power. Same exact thing. So let's not let feminists get away with this bullshit of acting like it's only because of men, it's because of patriarchy and the old boys club and all this. Because it's not. It's just about power. And so because it happens when the people are in power, regardless of gender and all that, it means sexual harassment, and because sexual harassment and laws and the policies and all that are not enforced anyway because they don't want to go up against this powerful person and or they make too much money from this powerful person. It's the same reason they did not fire Dan Schneider, even though Dan Schneider was either sexually abusing or raping or getting into underage relationships with underage girls, tit for tat, sex for, pay for play, sex for roles in new shows, such as supposedly Ariana Grande did, and Victoria Justice did, and Jeanette McCurdy did. Jeanette McCurdy, Victoria Justice and Ariana Grande, all three of these women, these young women, supposedly had sex with Dan Schneider, or otherwise sexually favored him or something, to, indulged his pedophilic, or let's call it hebephilic, indulged his hebephilic or ephebephilic predilections to get roles, to get new shows when their old show ended, right? And they all did get their own shows. Ariana Grande and Jeanette McCurdy got Cat and Sam, or Sam and Cat, whatever that show is called. And Victoria Justice got Victorious. Victorious was the name of that show. So, and, there were some allegations that came up and whatnot, but Dan Schneider was never fired because he had a meeting with the head of his corporation, Sumner Redstone, I think it was. And he showed Sumner Redstone how much money he makes for the corporation. Millions, tens of millions of dollars, right? The guy makes massive money for Nickelodeon, right? I mean, he and Nickelodeon parted ways very recently, like within the last year or two, I think in the last year. But before that, the allegations that arose several years before that, I think, and nothing was done. He was not fired. He probably would have been fired, but he made so much money for the corporation with all these new shows he was always creating, and all the shows were super successful, and merchandising and all the rest of it. And he was just making literally tens of millions of dollars for the corporation. So the corporation did not fire him because he was making them so much money. This is how it is. Powerful people make tons of money for whatever corporation they're working for, whether it's a movie studio or whatever, right? And so because they're making so much money, the corporation itself doesn't even want to fire them. Even if, like sometimes they want to fire the person, but they don't because, they don't want a scandal or whatever, but other times they know it's true, but they don't want to fire them because the person just makes so much money for them, right? Same thing with, all power positions. So this is why laws and policies and all this are worthless at stopping sexual harassment and stuff. This is why anarcho-capitalism is way, way better. Have no laws. So that when the sexual harassment happens, the victim just can beat the shit out of the person or shoot them or whatever, and then afterwards say, hey, this person is sexually harassing me. They wouldn't stop, so I had to do it, and then they show the evidence to everybody after the person is dead, and then everybody's like, oh yeah, you really were being sexually harassed. Okay, we don't have a problem with you having killed your sexual harasser, right? And then you get justice, and then the next person who wants to sexually harass their underling is going to think twice about it, because they see that the last person who did it got killed. You see, this is why anarcho-capitalism and letting people do whatever they want, with no matter how extreme the violence is, just allowing them to do whatever they want is way, 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 way better, and way, 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 way better for enforcing justice and sanity in society than laws and policies and all the rest of it are. Laws and policies and all the rest of that are a lot of times totally impotent at stopping the things they're supposedly supposed to stop, right? Anarcho-capitalism is way better. Governments and corporations and laws and all this kind of thing are stupid. They're pointless, right? And what else was I going to say? There was something else I was going to say regarding that too, about Ronell's abuse of Reitman. There was something else too, like, yeah, that's what it was. He actually had tons and tons of text message evidence of her sexually harassing him, and all the conversation, her threatening to, not work with him anymore or whatever, or making him talk in this romantic way, and not being happy when he didn't invite her on his family vacation. What was him and his parents and his sister to Israel, and all this kind of thing, right? Like, he's got evidence for basically all of it, or almost all of it, right? Tons and tons of evidence, right? And so even though he had tons and tons of evidence, and he took it to the school, and they ignored it for a long time, right? But then he eventually forced them to acknowledge it, and they did an internal investigation, and they found that Avital Ronell did, extremely sexually harass him over a period of years. They still did not fire her. It's crazy. And not only did they not fire her, but he still was being blackballed by all of academia, and he couldn't get a job. So this is how insane it is. This is why anarcho-capitalism is better. This is why feminism is insane, because women sexually harass too. What else is there to say other than that? I think that's about all I had to say about this. This has been Redshift. If you liked this video, hit the thumbs up button. If you didn't like it, hit the thumbs down button, and peace trucks.